Welcome to the Purity Pulse podcast, your go-to podcast for the natural health industry and everything Purity Life. I'm Julie Drapeau.
And I'm Erin Macklin.
And today we're going to go through our weekly check-ins. We're going to have Jim LaValle to interview, and we're going to do what's new to Purity Life.
All right. It's Dr. Jim LaValle, right?
Correct.
Yes. And you recently done a little bit of work with him or met with him?
Yeah, we've been, I don't know how many years I'd known him, seeing him at different shows.
Yeah.
He's worked with Purity Life for many years, doing a lot of work with Kyolic. Through that, we always been, connected, seeing him at shows. And the last one, we were in Germany, where there was like lots of, researchers showing their results on Kyolic. And then we started talking and bridge into what about perimenopause and menopause? Because I knew he was doing lots of work about that. He's going to talk to us about that today. But I was intrigued because I was I had started to have some, side effect and, being 50 now, starting to see like, something is out of whack here.
Yeah.
My brain was not functioning or, as usual, and starting to have some fat percentage, changing without changing my workouts, and didn't have any hot flashes, which is, the one element that people will bring up when they have, perimenopause,
Yes.
but it's so much more than that.
Well, it's funny because I remember you saying, I've had no symptoms. I have had no symptoms.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden it was like, oh, wait a second.
Yes.
That's what's going on here.
Yes, absolutely. And there's so much more now. There's Dr. Sims. There's Dr. Mary Claire Hayer. Like if you look at them on Instagram. So it seems... Well, it's very common. When you start to, you have a white car, you see all the white cars. You start to have issues, you see that everywhere. And so I became so focused on finding solution in natural that when I met with Dr. LaValle in Germany, I said, hey, can we set a minute and have a discussion here? Because I need help.
Yeah.
And I really want to pick your brain. And he says, oh, yeah, that's easy, Julie. Here's what you're going to take because this is exactly what you're going through.
Right.
And he was talking to me about, all the, that fat percentage that you get right into your belly, energy that is different. I have lots of energy, but to me, like that decrease was a shocker.
Yeah.
And I didn't like that. And being patient as I am, I said, okay,
No,
give
we're
me
dealing
now.
with this.
Like, tell me now. So that's why, we brought him on for the podcast, like to talk about his background, but also to help women's even more. It starts early.
Yeah.
And people don't know what it is.
Well, and I think in so many cases, just as it was with you, I think women kind of fight it, don't really like it's happening, but not really recognizing it because
That's
they
the
don't
key
know
word.
what they're seeing.
That is exactly the key word because some people get frozen shoulder and it's related to that. Like
Right.
there's so many symptoms. So that's one thing that he does, but he also does performance prevention. He works with athletes. So anyway, I don't want to talk too much. I could go on forever because I'm so excited to have him. So let's go into the interview and we'll be able to ask him all the questions.
Sounds good.
Well, thank you and welcome, Jim, to spend some time with us today. We know that you have a very busy schedule. We were just talking about that earlier. So
It's true.
It's true. It's true. As I was saying, we can look on your Instagram and you're everywhere. But as you were saying, you've been doing that for years. It's just now your son that is putting everything in light and in front of everybody on Instagram. So you've been busy for the past many years. Yeah.
Yeah.
And just before we start, I just wanted to mention for people who are listening or watching that you are a pharmacist, author, board-certified clinical nutritionist, an expert and educator in integrative and precision health. We're very lucky and fortunate to have you today. And we met a couple of months ago in Germany, the Kyolic Symposium, where they had great researcher. And one of them that caught our attention was Dr. Reed with her results on performance and prevention with Kyolic. What was your take on that? Were you excited about that one?
I was, because I knew that was going to be the case. It's just great that Dr. Reed studied it, because when you think about, and we talked about that this weekend in our Elite Minds Summit that we did for metabolic performance for athletes, anytime you can you're reducing oxidative stress, right? So you've got the donation with aged garlic of S-L-L-cysteine, which helps build up glutathione. And B, the big thing of the peripheral circulation improving, right? So you get oxygen in the tissues better. You get rid of the lactic acid in the periphery better. It just made sense that we were going to see, performance improvements in people over the age of, 40 or so. I'm long past
That's
that,
not us.
now that I'm in that senior stage. I thought it was a very prudent study. I thought it was a needed study.
Yeah.
I think the other hidden gems about that is that, as we start to study adiponectin more, I think we'll figure out that aged garlic extract or Kyolic's ability to regulate adiponectin, which is a compound that you can measure in blood. It measures it's kind of a marker for oxidative stress and for how you're using glucose. I just see it as great study. She did wonderful. And what a great symposium that was, right?
Oh,
I mean,
geniuses everywhere.
Right? I mean, I couldn't believe that, we had the one Nobel Prize laureate there. I was just, wow, let's listen to them for a while, right? It was incredible.
Yeah, that was fantastic. Let's take us back to how you came about doing what you do today. You're a pharmacist first, but what took you on the natural connection side of things?
Well, yeah, it's interesting. Like, I was training with weights at the age of 13. I kind of was interested in taking vitamins. My cousins were importing dietary supplements from Europe, actually, from Germany. They were distributors of Reckwig, and they were also doing Soroil brand nutrients back in the 70s.
Oh, wow.
And so I had exposure to them, and I thought, yeah, that's kind of neat. Well, then I went to pharmacy school and thought, I'm too smart for those natural products. But it was interesting. The pharmacy school I went to, we had a rich history in botanical medicine. And in fact, I had to take pharmacognosy, which is the study of plants as it relates to pharmaceutical production. And we had to take courses like, organic medicinal chemistry, had to learn how to compound. So I think I had that seed in me. And I was bodybuilding. I got hurt, couldn't play football. So I was bodybuilding, qualified for, national competitions. And then at that time, I started taking dietary supplements. I think that was the beginning of the journey. But what really catalyzed it was in my internship. And then right when I got out of pharmacy school, I'm working in a pharmacy. And people are just coming up to me and they're getting their drugs and they're going and shopping. And I'm looking at their shopping cart and I'm just going, oh my God, no wonder you need all these meds.
Yeah.
And we know that polypharmacy is a problem. It's not a secret. It's written about in all the pharmacy journals and medical journals. I mean, I'm not saying controversial things. It's like, why not try to keep people healthier? And basically, a lady came up to me and had a script for a diabetic medication. She was on a Medicaid card, so she was a government and U.S. Medicaid card for her prescription. And she came back. It was in a very, very rough, low-income neighborhood. I looked at her grocery card. It's like 5 till 9 at night, and I went, how about if I show you a couple things going around the grocery store? Well, I wasn't supposed to leave the pharmacy. I didn't know that. But I took her around and showed her some stuff. She was grateful, gave her prescription. People come in wanting the grocery store tour and asking me questions then the next, 2 weeks. And I basically decided that, I'd pitch tagging healthy foods in Kroger pharmacies in the grocery store. And I went to the president of Kroger's. He said, "You're nuts." Okay. I went to my marketing manager for my region for pharmacy. I said, look, we can test people for cholesterol. So we had the Jewish Hospital Center for Cholesterol Research. One of the most famous in the country was in Cincinnati. I wrote a little booklet. I actually have it on I'm going to pull it down. This is history right here.
Yeah.
I got to show you this. This was the very first thing I did that was related to it, and it was called A Shopper's Guide to a low saturated fat, low cholesterol diet. And I still have this because this reminds me. And so basically what ended up happening is we found more diabetics, sold more glucometers. We tagged foods that flew off the shelves, and it was the beginning of the natural foods movement for Kroger's, where we went from just selling oat bran to developing a whole department within, a very short period of time, which was exciting. But the most exciting part of it was the food tagging system ended up touching millions of people. And I know I've told this story a bunch, but I think it's super important. I just reached out to some Medicaid woman in a very low indigent neighborhood, just because I cared, right? You care when you're in the service of health, you should care.
Yeah.
And I took the time, and that one person ended up touching millions.
Yeah.
Incredible. So it doesn't matter. Like, I've had times where I've walked into seminars and there are 8 people in the room, and I'm like, oh my God, right? And then I've had times where I'm in front of 5,000, or I've been in front of 10,000, and it doesn't matter if it's 1 or 10,000, because you don't know what happens when you touch one life. And that is what drove from studying pharmacy to clinical nutrition to becoming a diplomat of the British Institute of Homeopathy, both in medicine and in pharmacy. I got my master's in theology and pastoral wellness, and then became, now I'm the chief science officer for Lifetime, in charge of 2.5 million lives, and co-chair for the American Academy of Anti-Aging Medicine with 40,000 docs, and, chair of the International Peptide Society, training another thousands of docs. It's really exciting. I mean, I got to tell you, there's a part of me that's sad that I'm 64, because I'm just feeling like, hey, I'm just starting to gain my stride.
But saying that, saying this at 64, I mean, with all the work you're doing and helping people, prevention is, and longevity is such a big thing now that you're the proof that 64 is the 40 of before. Yeah. Right. And I'm so,
I like that.
Yeah, exactly, right? Well, you're so passionate, and I want to take the moment to really acknowledge that, because people like you help the world, right? As you said, you didn't go in front of your audience and say, oh, there's 8 people, I'm just not going to do it, and say, see ya, because you got the proof that one person that you touch brought so much more. And that's definitely right. It's people like you that is needed to continue to spread that amazing word out there. So that's
able to multiply it again and again and again, right? I think that's the big difference too, is you start by teaching, and then those people start teaching as well. And I think you've really shown that in so much of the work that you've done, that you've been able to educate people who are able to move that forward as well.
Yes.
Well, that's the whole goal, right? I mean, I've never held my knowledge close to me. I've always, even whether it's my books or information, I stood on the shoulders of my mentors, and I want people to stand on my shoulders. And I hope I, have progressed, integrative care and, regenerative care, whatever we want to call it, just the betterment of people living a quality life where they can embrace their wellness. They can work with their healthcare providers as a team. They get to maximize the benefit of living life, right? I mean, in the end, that's what we're trying to do, Right. And so I thank you for acknowledging that, because I'm pretty passionate about that as well. I love teaching. I want people to create their own art. Create their own art from what I've shown, and make me a part of your mosaic, right? That's all.
That's cool. No, that's amazing. I think that's fantastic that you're so willing to share and that you're so good at it. Within a lot of what you do, you use a tool called the Metabolic Code. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So, when I was working on 300 to 400 people a week, I kept seeing similar metabotypes, or basically clusterized personalization. Mm-hmm. And I thought it would be cool if I could, make an algorithm for this. So the Metabolic Code basically takes questionnaire, biometrics, wearable data, blood, urine, saliva, combines it all and clusters it into groups. And the main reason I did it, you sit in front of somebody who's doing integrative care, they put down a big wad of paper like what you guys got right there with, 20 pages of labs, and they're circling and making happy faces and sad faces, and this needs to be better, and all this stuff's going on. People just leave confused.
Yeah, what do you do?
They're not sure what to do. And then they get a bucket of supplements, and they don't know what they're for. Mm-hmm. And, it isn't about us showing people how much we know. It's us translating it to make it easy for them to understand, right? Because then when you understand, you can act on it. Oh, I need to change this. So the Metabolic Code broke things down into 5 buckets. And learning theory is people learn in 5s and 3s, right? So 5 buckets, 5 element theory, whatever. however you want to put it. So adrenal, thyroid, pancreas is a circuit in your body that's been written out in all over healthcare. Cortisol, insulin, thyroid. When you're under stress, you get insulin resistant, you gain weight, you feel tired, your thyroid goes low. But we don't teach people these relationships. And if that relationship gets bad enough, it can enter into the next network, which is called gut, immune, brain, right? So, your gut gets leaky, now you get sensitive to food, you start making inflammatory compounds. I always say you start feeling like you're pushing a thought through jello. You start feel cognitively a little slurred. So these 5 triads, basically it scores something called a metaflammation index. So metabolic inflammation leads to inflamed aging. And those are terms that are in the literature. I wish I made those terms up. I think they are so cool. Metaflammation leads to inflammation. None of us want to age with inflammation in our body. We're all going to do it a little bit. I always say even Da Vinci died, right? I mean, we're all going to fully express our life and hopefully do wonderful things and touch people's lives. But in the end, we just want to be as vibrant as we can, as long as we can. And so the metabolic code is there as a process that allows people to unwind their chemistry, right? And then take action on what points are broke on you. We're using it with the military. We're using it. We've got about a 5,000 doctor group that is starting to implement it. We're using it at Lifetime. So we're going to have, and we just did our first analytics on it. And we basically showed, we just put it through our data engine and showed that it was actually 40 women, all either menstruating, perimenopause, or menopause, right? So it ties into today, right?
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what we found was when you can get your body all working together, all 5 of those networks, gut, immune, brain, cardiopulmonary, estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, liver, lymph, kidney. When the body starts working in harmony, they lose more weight and their symptoms or the way they feel dramatically improves. So it goes to that thought of, you can replace a hormone. You can take something for stress. But I know, look, Julie, I know your guys' commitment is about how do we live a healthier life, correct, right? And a healthier life is how do I really create change that allows my body to maintain homeostasis, right? So that's what it's basically about.
Yeah, that's fantastic because it's not just taking one part and seeing that there's an issue and put a Band-Aid over it. It's understanding the whole puzzle that works together. So
that's exactly it.
And what about that's a good segue to our women's and hormones and issues and struggle and what's going on. I was saying earlier that I had a discussion with you because I discovered that I was going through that. And I think for some reason, like in the past year, maybe because I was personally interested in, but I feel that more and more out there is talked about perimenopause and menopause way more. I mean, when I was thinking of my mom back in time, I remember she had hot flashes. She was sitting in the snowbanks, and that was the end of it. That was it, right?
That was basically all that was talked about.
That was the extent. So what do we do now?
Just like, specifically with women, but also with men and andropause. But for women, the symptoms, I think, get much more dramatic. And there's a couple things that we should know. One is that women should start preparing for menopause when they're in their teens.
Agree.
Wow.
So the big one there, the first one is you need to build your bone density. So you have a lot of girls, body conscious, the dieting, not getting enough minerals in their diet, not eating nutrient dense foods necessarily. They're maybe iron deficient, not enough, eating some grass-fed red meat, right, to get that iron. And so you have to remember the first year after menopause, you may lose as much as 25% of your bone density.
Crazy.
Huge, eh?
Now, what's crazy about that is, I still think we're just not aware of how big an issue this is because 20% of people will die if they break their hip. 50% will lose one quality of their movement. So if you're walking, you might be using a cane. If you were using a cane, you might be using a walker. If you were using a walker, you might be in a wheelchair. And so I think it's really important to think about women's hormone health is a journey, and you've got different ways that women express their hormones. Some women are, make more bad estrogen, or I'd say bad estrogen. They metabolize their estrogen in a more, I would say, aggressive way, right? And part of the reason there is they're not getting enough fiber. So fiber is incredibly important. If a woman is listening right now and they're not getting 30 grams of fiber a day in between their diet and taking supplemental fiber, it's the number one thing that they can do, because fiber helps to keep you metabolizing your estrogen. When you're low in fiber, and say you're either eating, I'm eating ketogenic now, a high fat diet, or a diet that's higher in sugar and refined carbs, you actually make an enzyme that cuts off the handle that your body put on the estrogen to carry it out. And now it recirculates and stores. So that's the beginning. And then we start to move towards perimenopause, where progesterone levels might start to drop in women. And so, what starts to happen? You can start to have mood changes. You start to become estrogen dominant. Weight starts to come on. Bone density is a big issue with progesterone as well. And so then all of a sudden you're in perimenopause and you're going, wait a second, why do I feel this way? I'm feeling a little more agitated. Why am I a little more aggressive? As we move through that, we then get that drop in estradiol, and certainly the studies that have come out in the last few years regarding glycans. So glycans are a structural component in every cell in your body. When women lose their estradiol, they go from making anti-inflammatory glycans to pro-inflammatory glycans. So women are protected against heart disease before menopause, and then more women end up with dying of heart disease post-menopause than do men. So this is a big thing to understand, that value. And then there's that third piece. So at this point, menopause hits, your progesterone's low, your estradiol is low. You start going, my gosh. We had a women's health center at the Institute in Ohio. So I had a lot of women at my institute that came in, and it's like a switch that just turned off. And all of a sudden I'm not thinking the same way.
Right.
I've got you Southwest.
Yeah, I always say that. It's like you get suddenly, like you are looking at you and you're like I want to go back in that person, but I don't know what happened.
That's not me anymore.
Exactly. Like it's a total switch, as you said. It's that dramatic.
Yeah, it is. And then, the third component to that is where's their testosterone at, right? So for, testosterone for women, that can help with sex drive, muscle retention, right? So, and then when we complicate it, at the American Academy of Anti-Aging Medicine, in fact, I'm teaching it, I'm opening up the Women's Health Summit, just kind of giving the introductory remarks and then doing a couple talks, related to thyroid and hormones. But we've got all kinds of ways of doing hormones, right? So women that decide to replace hormones as they're either in perimenopause, such as bringing their progesterone up, which can help them kind of restart their cycle and kind of get them back on track, help their mood, help their sleep. One of the big features of low progesterone is insomnia. But then it goes to, well, gee, I probably need estradiol. Should I? Shouldn't I? Do I need testosterone? And then there's a lot of camps out there. And the big thing I would encourage is when you're going through hormone replacement, you should either feel great. And if you're not feeling great, you probably got to change how you're doing your hormones.
Right.
So, because I have to tell you, I've seen it where they're overdosing. They're thinking I've got to be back in my 20s. And what you really have to do is be the best version of your 47-year-old self or 52-year-old self, or, whatever age you're at.
Yeah.
And I think that's a key thing. And the other piece to it is, and I always talk to doctors about this, if you correct the chemistry of a person a little bit, you get their gut health a little better. You make sure they have their trace minerals like magnesium and chromium. They get their nutrient status good. They correct for their diet. They do hormones much better. They work so much better in them, and you're not forever adjusting what's going on, because I think that's one of the big things that sometimes people struggle with is the seesaw adjustments.
Right.
And what I found over the years, 35 years now of doing hormones. I mean, I've been at it for a couple of years, for a minute anyway. And I had a brilliant doctor. I mean, Maureen Pelletier wrote the book, The Idiot's Guide to Menopause. She was my physician that was in my group that was in charge of women's health at our institute in Ohio. And what I just found is the big rule is start low, go slow. Go get to that dosing where you go, you know what? My vaginal dryness is gone. I'm cognitively sharper again. I don't have hot flashes. I'm seeing my body composition change. Okay, why don't we just hold there instead of let's continue going up just because we're trying to hit a certain blood value, right? Now, the big thing that I think that really is an issue is when you're taking estrogen, your body can metabolize it down 3 pathways. 1 is really healthy for you, 2 are not so good. And so you want to measure that. And that's a urine test that you can do that. And there's simple things that you can do to make it get back on track and go down the right pathway, right? Diindole methane extract from broccoli, right? Sulforaphane glucosinolate, compounds you guys are definitely used to talking about. Supplements. Those are really important. So, I mean, I think those are some of the things that when I think about women's hormone health, I think it is, for the majority of women, it creates a tremendous improvement in quality of life.
Oh, yeah, because you don't want to, like when you hit perimenopause or menopause, you're at around, I would say, roughly around 50. It's just half of your life. You still have the rest of half of your life to do. What type of, because we're talking about hormones and, having an open mind to it is greater and better than before. Then the whole stories that we heard that was bad for you. In the supplement side of things, if somebody wanted to start more on the supplement side before, or to start preventing.
Like prevention kind of?
Yeah, or we just want to start there.
Kind of,
What supplements would you suggest?
Well, fiber, number 1.
Yes.
Probiotics, number 2. And it's interesting because if you keep the diversity of your microbiome good and you're not killing off bacteria and releasing something called lipopolysaccharide from the bugs that have died, the lipopolysaccharide attaches to your gonads and it can alter your hormone production. So gut health is pretty important. And then if you think about regulating progesterone or say you have erratic menses, I love Vitex or Agnus castus, otherwise known as chasteberry. Fantastic. Works very well. Getting in black currant seed oil and omega-3s, really good. The omega-6 from black currant because it supplies GLA, really good. Gamma-linoleic acid, really good. So we're at fiber, using omega-3s and say black currant, considering taking a probiotic, and then, I'm having an irregular cycle. Try Vitex. It does a great job. Now, the only thing to know about Vitex is it could reduce the effectiveness if you're on oral contraceptive therapy. So women should know that it could reduce the effectiveness of that. And typically when women are on that, they're not wanting an oops moment. And so that's important. And then, for me, which I think is a phenomenal, I wrote a book on black cohosh. I think black cohosh is a fantastic herb which helps women with their hot flashes, and it won't do as much for, say, vaginal dryness, which is kind of the, one of the side effects of, as you start to lose estrogen, and even in terms of pelvic floor, you start to get that urinary incontinence that can occur. A lot of times that you may need medication to correct that, but black cohosh in combination with Vitex are really 2 of the all-star herbs that can really help you start from a natural perspective. And I always encourage that to begin with anyway. Try to make your own hormones work as long as they can.
Yeah. It sounds like some of those supplements would be good preventative as well. At what stage do you start looking at intervention or dealing with supplementing or even hormones in terms of that?
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with, what symptoms are you having?
Yeah.
How do you
feel? If you're having hot flashes that are keeping you up all night, or you're in the middle of a meeting and you break out in the sweat, you might go, I think I need to do something. Progesterone with insomnia, do you have bone thinning? both estradiol and progesterone. And when I say estradiol, when I'm talking about potentially doing bioidentical hormone replacement, is just that. It's bioidentical. It's identical to what your body has already been making. And everybody goes, well, what about the risk of breast cancer? First thing I try to counsel people on is, if estradiol was the problem, women in their 20s and 30s would be getting breast cancer because they're making a ton of estradiol, right? You're just supplementing a little. Obviously, if you have a personal breast cancer history, that you have to be really careful of. There's information on both sides of that I think you just have to make a weighted decision talking to your healthcare provider that may be knowledgeable in both sides, right? If you're just one side or the other, you're going to give your opinion. You want to understand both sides of it and make an intelligent decision. Bioidentical progesterone, I think, just helps. I see no place where it harms. Now, very rarely a woman is doing too much progesterone. She'll notice something like weight gain, that could occur. But I got to be honest, I rarely see that happen. A big one is that whole pelvic floor issue and, urinary incontinence, right? It's a big, big problem. And so it turns out that the pelvic floor has a lot of testosterone receptors in it. So sometimes just a modest topical dose of testosterone and another estrogen called estriol can really help to strengthen the pelvic floor along with pelvic floor exercises. Women are familiar with Kegels. And of course, there's new devices now that help that as well, right? There's even devices that can help with stimulation and reintegration of that pelvic floor. That's a big quality of life issue, right?
Oh, for sure.
Tremendous.
Absolutely. I think what was really enlightening for me when I talked to you was it's such that switch that I didn't want, as passionate as I don't want other women to go through that without knowing they can do something, because it's not all the doctors that would be open to discuss that. It's like,
and knowing what it is, knowing what's going on. Like it's almost
the symptoms that are.
It's almost a mirror to when you start going through puberty. If nobody's told you this is what's coming, this is what's going to happen, you're just there going, what is going on right now? Right.
And to work as early as, understanding your bone density and work when you're younger, not just to do those crazy cardio, not building muscle mass, and then you're already in the negative.
Set yourself up for that healthy success, basically
your
hormone
base.
Success.
Yes, absolutely. We talked a lot about women's, and that was the main topic of having you, but would you just maybe talk a little bit about men's? Because we talked a lot about women, but you guys are going through a little bit of stuff too, right?
Just a little. I like to call it the whatever syndrome. When men's testosterone starts to go down, they lose muscle and all of a sudden they're a little flabby in their chest and the belly's growing a little bit. I call it, they get the whatever syndrome. It's like, hey, let's go to a ball game. I have to get in the car to do that. Well, yeah, I'll pick you up. Yeah, but then we got to park at the parking lot. You got to walk in the game, right? You got to watch the game and whatever. I think I'm going to sit here and channel surf. It can affect men's moods too. And it's interesting. I'm seeing a lot of younger and younger men that have low testosterone. And I think we've got this issue both in men and women. We got a lot of xenoestrogens in the environment. We don't realize the impact of pesticides and environmental burden and the cosmetics that you use as women. And then I would say even like the hair care, and now men are equally using cosmetic care, right?
Absolutely.
Without a doubt, they're concerned about their skin. And so, there's a lot of ways that we get these estrogen mimetics that block our hormones. And then men that are out for body composition, maybe starting to look around, and they're using SARMs, which, are selective androgen receptor modifiers to try and get lean and muscular, but they don't realize if you stay on those things, and first of all, they're not for human use. That should be a warning. And I see this rampant. This isn't just a rarity. It blocks your testosterone. So I'll see men who, have testosterones of an 80-year-old. And then you combine young student athletes, both men and women, right? Now, when student athletes are training, they're on these very rigorous training programs without any evaluation of what is going on in their chemistry. And it's kind of like no rest days, no modulation of your training, no looking at your heart rate. Are you recovered? Are you not recovered? And then the harder you train and you push up your cortisol, your body's main stress hormone, as cortisol goes up, your gonadotropin releasing hormone goes down. So you don't have the signal to tell your gonads to make hormones anymore.
Don't have time for
And
that.
Yeah. And so in men, I see a lot of young athletic men, we make this mistake that our tweens, when we're kind of in that early teen, or late preteen area, they're training 4 hours a day. And we think, right? And we think that they're just little adults. So they can do the same kind of training. They're just littler and use less weight, or, they're still using ladder drills, they're still doing all that stuff. And it's really a developing chemistry still. And so I think it's in men, once again, we went through this phase of we're going to give them testosterone and they're going to be great. And in fact, some men replace their testosterone and they do great. But for a lot of men, they go down that journey too early. Instead of trying to stimulate your brain, your pituitary to make luteinizing hormone to tell your Leydig cells as a man, and your testicles, make testosterone again, please. You shut this path off. Let's open it back up. Instead, we see, there's a lot of, telemedicine kind of going on where it's like, hey, go on and get your TRT. I've always been a big believer. And if you look at University of Michigan's Men's Health Initiative, Baylor University, they've done a lot of research on this. And it turns out, yes, too low a testosterone, really bad for men's health. Too high a testosterone, really bad for men's health. So there's this sweet spot of physiology that we should be attaining. Same thing with women. And I think that message hasn't clearly been told yet. It's like, hey, I'm taking this test. I'm getting muscles. I love this stuff. Keep it coming. And not necessarily, where are you going? Yeah, right. What's the consequence? Where are you moving to?
That's very interesting and so much more. I think we could keep you for hours and hours. People will ask us to bring you on for longer, another time. It's great to see, again, people like you out there that are voicing and creating a good path and to start and advising to start early in age to prevent, which is the key.
Spreading the news and spreading the education.
Yes,
Thank you for that.
Yes, thank you. But before we let you go, I know you're very busy, you travel, so what do you do to relax and to just take time for you? What's your favorite thing?
I get on my little boat and float around on the lake out here in Texas. So I enjoy just getting out, getting on the water and taking in that fresh breeze. And whether it's sunset and watching a sunset, I love working out. I really, that's probably one of my favorite things to do. And then of course, my wife and I, Laura and I, we really enjoy getting in the kitchen together. And, my father was a world famous chef. So there's a lot of joy around our lifestyle, right? So that's probably the biggest things that I do. I think I'm still maybe a little too busy to do as much of that as I should.
Well, you definitely are a proof of health and passion. Again, thank you for spending the time with us. It was a delight. So thank you very much.
I'll come back anytime. You guys are terrific.
Now, time for a little new to Purity Life. Mm-hmm. And today we're talking about sports research. New brand to us, new brand to Canada. Absolutely. We've been eyeing this brand for a while, so we're very excited to present it.
Yeah, for different reasons. As you know, first of all, it's a big trend. Yeah. Everything that is sports nutrition has been for a couple of years. Yeah. Prevention and performance kind of mixed together. What we were looking forward to with sports research is also the difference in the packaging look.
Mm-hmm. So accessible. It's so nice.
Yes. And for those who are listening, the packaging is very, I would say, it's not overpowering, but very different colors. So when you have them on shelf, you have that black, that beige, and then green. But it's kind of simple in the way it's laid out on the
packaging. Yes. Even the way that it's just a straight cylinder. It's not like your usual ones where you kind of have that taper in. Yeah. So it's very different from that sense, but it keeps it really clean. Yeah. And they've really made the packaging fit the quantity that's inside. I don't know a better way to explain that, but for
Yes.
for a lot of these kinds of products, they're so big and bulky, and these ones really are just tapered for the amount of product that's in it.
Absolutely.
So it's a bit smaller.
Product wise, they have like a full regimen. So it's not just like a sports nutrition brand where you wouldn't have, all the basic vitamins. So it's kind of a one-stop shop basically. So you have your collagen, protein, probiotics and enzymes, MCT oils, essential fatty acid, vitamin D.
Yeah.
And they're also coming as well with some creatine gummies.
Yeah.
So
That's cool.
it will be a little bit later on, but that's going to be really cool.
Yeah.
As we know, people like to take their creatine. It's very popular, has been for a different reason, like to improve your workout, but also mental health has been shown for.
Well, and I think that's the thing, right? With the creatine now, we're spanning different markets. We're getting into the older generation, the younger ones, the females, males. It's not just for, the heavy athlete anymore.
So they will offer you that creatine gummy, which is very different. We see powder most of the time. They're also going to come with some hydration sachet as well. So in small boxes, we saw it at the show.
Yes, we saw it in Anaheim and we saw it at
CHFA West.
Yeah.
So again, those nice little black boxes that will stand out.
Yep.
As we know, hydration is big and it's good to have different type of offers so it can fit with different needs. So
they have a neat feature too. So they have on their website, they have a track your lot.
Okay, what is that?
So it's track your lot on their website. And basically with any one of the products, you choose your product and then you put your lot in and you can track exactly where it's coming from. So
that's
really,
awesome.
really lots of transparency with this brand too. Yeah.
Yeah, we love transparency
Yes, we
here.
do.
Yeah, absolutely. So give it a try, give it a look, speak to your reps at Purity Life.
Oh, so fun with Jim. He is just a fount of knowledge all the time, eh?
Oh yeah, you can talk with him for hours.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks so much for joining us for this episode. Make sure that you subscribe, leave us some reviews, and you can follow us at Purity Life Health Products LP on Instagram. Julie is at
JD_Girl Power.
And I'm at Erin G. Macklin.
Join us next week.